Coming up on Lawmakers, the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly gets underway. An in-depth interview with Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle about his expectations. And a preview of the 4 T's: transportation, trauma, taxes, and teachers that we expect to dominate this session. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Hello. Also on Lawmakers, new leadership is elected in the Senate.
And controversy in the House over changes to the rules.
But first, our top story: the 150th Georgia General Assembly officially begins. Well, legislative day one is mostly about nominations and elections for leadership. Today in the Senate, after Henry County Judge Arch McGarity swore in Georgia's 56 senators, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, who presides over the Senate, took a few moments to share his hopes for 2009.
Abraham Lincoln said that leadership is best defined by knowing where you're going and the ability to persuade others to follow. Having 3 simple things in your mind each and every day. That is the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, but also the compassion to listen to other viewpoints. That is what this august body is all about. It isn't shaped by Democrat or Republican, but it's shaped around a state that we love.
New Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers then introduced newly elected Senate President Pro Tem Tommy Williams.
There are more honor graduates in India than there are students in America. China is now the country that has the most people that speak English. Technology is outdated every 2 years. A kid that starts at Georgia Tech, what he learns the first 2 years is obsolete for the second 2. Are we keeping up with these changes, these global changes? I don't think we are.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle then announced this year's committee chairs. And Rules Committee Chairman Don Balfour went through a few rule changes for this year.
In the past, we've always said you can introduce a bill through day 30, and after that you can't introduce a bill. We've changed the rules so that in the first year of the session, you can introduce a bill through day 39, because obviously it will hold over to the next year.
And Senate Resolution 5, which deals with the new rules proposed by Senator Balfour, passed 35-14, and many of the new rules were just clarification. And while watching that story, you may have noticed some young faces in the crowd. That's because family is always invited every other year for the swearing-in ceremony.
And on the other side of the Capitol, opening day ceremonies in the House began with what might be called uncharacteristic bipartisan unity. It didn't last.
You will so conduct yourself as will in your judgment be most conducive to the interests and prosperity of Georgia.
First order of business, swearing in of House members by State Supreme Court Chief Justice Leo Ward Sears.
Next order of business, as aforesaid, is the election of Speaker.
Then selection of the House Speaker.
Mr. Clerk, I rise to nominate the gentleman from the 19th, the Honorable Glenn Richardson, as Speaker of the House.
Although Glenn Richardson soundly defeated challenger David Ralston in the Republican caucus election for Speaker back in November, this would be the moment for Democrats to nominate their pick.
We, too, the Democratic caucus in Georgia, put aside the partisan rancor and ask that we move forward with the work of this state.
And so it went for the election of the House Speaker Pro Tem and the clerk. Then it was time to approve the House rules, including the controversial reinstatement of ex officio committee members called hawks.
This rule it really isn't really for the minority party. It's to keep the rank and file of the majority party in line, because if it comes out of whack, then you just throw some more votes in. They kind of swoop in and have the authority to vote the same as any other member of that standing committee, whether they heard the debate, whether they have a background in that area, whether they know the subject matter, whether they care about it or not. They're sent in to make a vote to control the process.
It's just not fair play. You have the deck, you have the jokers, you know when the deck is going to be shuffled. You could even put extra jokers in it, and you just it's just That's just not the way to play it. It's just not the way to play it. And then you could deal from the bottom of the deck. Come on now.
Prior to the enactment of this rule book that we operated on, there was something called engrossment. For those of you that were not here, let me just briefly tell you what that was. When a bill was read for the first and second time on the second reading, the House would vote and the majority party would vote because they had all the votes and the jokers and the deck, and they'd vote to engross the bill. And you know what that meant? That meant from the time it went to the committee, for the committee system that you're on to debate, it could not be changed.
In the end, the House adopted the rules in House Resolution 14 by a vote of 108 to 65.
A transportation initiative supported by Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle failed in the Senate last session, just moments before sine die. So it's no surprise that even during a recession, immediate action is being demanded from legislators and coalitions from all over Georgia for transportation legislation.
There's gridlock in the city, commute times extending, and the Department of Transportation is still trying to right the ship.
Redefining the Department of Transportation, and we've got to look outside the box and look at the other tools like concessions and tolls and things of this nature where you're engaging the private sector to come in and build many of these roads.
Senate Transportation Chairman Jeff Mullis says even though a bill creating a special local option sales tax for transportation known as a T-SPLOS failed in the final moments of last year, this year that bill should be step one.
The Senate is on board for passing something early. The senators are convinced that transportation funding is something we need to look at, and a bill that will allow the voters, the citizens, to decide if they want to tax themselves is the only way we'd pass something to improve the funding of transportation this year.
The Get Georgia Moving Coalition also supports the T-SPLOS bill, and like Lieutenant Governor Cagle and Chairman Mullis say, something needs to happen this year.
Do something about it and do it now. We're fed up, we're tired of it, and we need to get something moving right now. The longer we wait, the worse it gets, the more expensive it becomes.
The Georgia Public Policy Foundation has a stance that enough time and money have been put into studying the problem, and now it's time to act. And step one, they believe, should be building highways to divert a lot of the freight traffic around the metro Atlanta area. They say that 30–40% of the truckers that come through don't want to be here in the first place, but have no other option.
If we were able to move some of that distribution capability down to middle Georgia, and we're not taking away any jobs from Atlanta, there's plenty of growth coming, that this can be the new distribution capability.
We do need alternative routes for truck traffic and freight and commerce to move quickly around our big city of Atlanta and the metro area. However, we do need high-speed rail, light rail, passenger rail, and maglev to help move people into and out of our major cities.
Again, the T-SPLOS legislation would still need to be voted on by each community before their taxes go into these transportation projects. Additional studies from the Get Georgia Moving Coalition found that over 70% of Georgians, this is both Democrat and Republican, support the transportation SPLOS.
How to permanently fund the state's trauma care network will likely top this session's legislative agenda. And as lawmakers Valerie Edwards reports from the Capitol, this time around, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle says it's time to rethink the state's approach to funding Georgia's trauma care network. Valerie.
And Wandy, in 2008, House Speaker Glenn Richardson proposed adding a $10 car tag fee to fund the state's trauma network. That was expected to raise nearly $74 million annually. Another plan would have allocated the state's $250 million share of property tax revenue to fund the system. However, neither proposal made it to the governor's desk. Now, with the state facing a $2.8 billion budget shortfall, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle has called for a new approach to permanently funding trauma care here in Georgia.
There is a right way of going about it and a wrong way, and you can't create another entitlement program that there's no outcome measurables attached to it. There's the right business approach, and we've supported what we call the readiness concept, to where we are creating a statewide trauma network across this great state, and we believe in that.
In 2008, nearly $60 million was budgeted to help pay for trauma care. The bulk of that, nearly $13 million, went to Atlanta's Grady Memorial Hospital. But that money is expected to run out at the end of this month. And now the lieutenant governor is questioning where exactly that money went to.
Now, we spent $60 million last year on trauma. Not one new trauma center was open. That's a flawed model. We need a new model this year to ensure that the money that could be allocated will really take care of our citizens in our state.
In spring of '08, I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Patrick O'Neill. He heads trauma for the state's Department of Human Resources. A year ago, this was his assessment of where we stand. I don't think we're going to be able to really make a dent in the death rate from trauma in Georgia. I think we're 3 to 5 years away from that. And it's going to take additional system changes that we don't have the funds for right now. For an example of how vital a trauma network is, remember that deadly accident in the summer of 2008. 6 people were killed and dozens injured when a bus carrying a team of baseball players plunged from an overpass to an Atlanta freeway below. Experts say that if the injured were not taken to nearby Grady, the death toll would have been much higher. And that seems to be exactly what the Lieutenant Governor is saying here.
To think that someone south of Macon would be in a tragic accident and not have the trauma level of care necessary to take care of them is just not right.
Late last year, the American College of Emergency Physicians gave the state a failing grade after rating Georgia's emergency care facilities. In 2008, the Medical Association of Georgia estimated that a good trauma network could save nearly 700 lives each year. Recently, researchers at the Andrew Young School of Public Policy recommended consolidating emergency communication and transportation and coordinating emergency services on a regional basis. Reporting live, I'm Valerie Edwards for Lawmakers.
Great information. Thanks for that update, Valerie. The State Board of Education addressed the budget crisis late last week, voting to allow local school systems to increase maximum class sizes by 2 students at the elementary and middle school levels. According to State School Superintendent Kathy Cox, the one-year plan will save about $200 million in personnel costs. But the head of an organization representing 40,000 Georgia educators told me late last week that 20 students in a kindergarten class and 30 in classes from grades 4 through 8 could really decrease student achievement in the long run.
We were very disappointed in the decision by the State Board of Education. Although we understand in lieu of the economic reality, it was better for the State Board of Education to handle it than for the legislature to handle it. We're very hopeful that Superintendent Cox is able to come back at this time next year and say, we promised 1 year, we've honored our promise, because she's never lied to the educators yet.
But the class size increase won't make a ripple in the overall budget shortfall. Senate Appropriations Chair Jack Hill told Child Advocates last week that he doesn't want to follow Alabama's lead, funding education with bonds.
Your K-12 budget's about 40%. It makes up $7.65 billion, and that's to some degree, and as I looked at the other states, it appeared to me they had the same idea. That's the last thing you really want to cut, is that investment in education, and because it's what, 80% or something personnel, it's really hard to do anyway. But still, when you take that off the table or your cut to education, which right now is at 2%, you've just magnified the amount that you've got to get out of the rest of the budget.
Local school systems say they've borne the brunt of the state's economic woes since 2003 in the form of austerity cuts.
I can explain that to you real quickly. What you do is you take the state's education formula and you figure out how much money every system is supposed to earn, and then you whack it. And that's an austerity cut. And that's basically what's happened for the last 6 years. It's in next year's budget, and we have no doubt that in these economic times, it'll be there again in the next year. That total to local school districts in Georgia has been about $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. Didn't you see where DeKalb County is making dramatic changes to their pupil transportation program? It's because the money's getting tight. It was just intriguing to me to see that Fayette County, which is the home to some of the highest per capita income in our state, and yet they're talking about a massive budget deficit, and they're asking for the teachers to return the raise. What that is a recognition of exactly what Senator Hill said, and that is that a raise has been approved, but the cuts are going to exceed the amount of money that was put in the state budget for the raise. Therefore, the teacher raise falls on the backs of local taxpayers.
Even in times of economic uncertainty, investing in that intellectual capital is still the best way to go to create a brighter future for Georgia. That being said, we're going to continue with our members to hold the legislators' feet to the fire, to make sure that this year when the session is over, they don't pat themselves on the back for empty accomplishments.
The Georgia Association of Educators suggests that a low-cost education initiative would be passage of Representative Roger Bruce's Parent Protection Act, which provides up to 24 hours of unpaid leave for parents to attend their children's school events. The General Assembly has failed to pass the measure during the past 2 sessions.
Well, in these tough economic times, taxes are often seen as an answer to state revenue problems. Legislation has been pre-filed this session that would raise the tobacco tax. And lawmakers Minu Hosseini joins us live with the details. Minu.
On Tuesday, Representative Ron Stevens pre-filed House Bill 39, legislation that aims to add $1 to Georgia's current cigarette tax. The tax increase, which would raise the tax from 37 cents to $1.37, has already been opposed by Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle.
Well, I just don't like raising taxes, period. And it doesn't matter what it's on. I just think that this is our opportunity, our moment to downsize or right-size government. We, in good times, get really, really fat. And it is time for us to slim this government down. And we can do it. And by doing it, we're going to position ourselves and prepare us when we get back into good times to really make wise investment decisions. It's what business does every day, and the government should not be exempt.
But Representative Stevens, who is also a pharmacist, said that the legislation would not only help bring in much-needed revenue, but that it would also help reduce the tobacco-related illness in Georgia, which costs taxpayers about $2.25 billion per year in health care costs.
And the truth is if as cigarette decreases and our health care costs, of course, decrease along with that, we're all the better. And unless we do something now, we're going to have Our annual Medicaid expenditures for tobacco illness is $537 million of your tax dollars. The annual expenditures that you've heard before is $2.25 billion on total tobacco illness in this state. The voters in this state deserve better. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2002, before the tobacco tax increase, the youth and adult smoking rate was at 23.7%. Since that time, it's down to 17%. It works.
During the 2008 session, several pieces of tax legislation failed, but Representative Stevens attributed their failure to last year being an election year. Legislation that went through both the House and the Senate but did not pass included a proposed elimination of the ad valorem tax on personal vehicles and a Senate proposed plan to reduce income taxes. And Representative Stevens is not the only legislator attempting to increase revenue this year. With the state facing almost $2 billion in budget deficit, we should expect to see lawmakers trying to fill the gaps and avoid cutting funding elsewhere. Reporting live, I'm Minu Hosseini for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Minu. You know, this Wednesday, January 14th at 10 a.m., Governor Sonny Perdue delivers his 7th State of the State address to a special joint session of the Georgia General Assembly. We want to invite you to join us here on GPB Knowledge for a live broadcast of the governor's address. You can also watch that address online at gpb.org/lawmakers/state of the state. That's at 10 a.m. this Wednesday. Be sure to tune in to Lawmakers at 7 p.m. on Wednesday evening for a special 1-hour program that will include the State of the State address in its entirety. That's a 1-hour Lawmakers this Wednesday at 7 p.m.
As Lieutenant Governor, one of Casey Cagle's roles is to preside over the Senate. He begins every year with a list of new initiatives he hopes to pass during the session. And I recently had a chance to sit down and talk with the Lieutenant Governor and began our discussion by asking him about his priorities for 2009.
No doubt that the recession and the economy that we find ourselves in will monopolize the entire session. We are seeing, record unemployment, record foreclosure, a lot of pain out there, and the downsizing that's occurring within corporate America all over this country is really having an impact. And certainly Georgia's not exempt from it. We're looking at about a $2 billion shortfall in revenue. And quite honestly, I don't want to raise taxes, and I think we need to really cut the budget and look at those things that truly are essential and those that are non-essential. Government can't be all things to all people, and it's my philosophical view that government should only do for the citizenry what the citizenry cannot do for themselves. And so when it comes to education, along with taking care of the blind, the disabled, the elderly, along with public safety, those are core functions, core services that government needs to do. But we've got to look long and hard in those other areas to really weed out the real non-essential things.
And taxes was a big issue last year. Tax reform, there were ideas in the House, ideas in the Senate. Not too much went through. Are we planning to see as many tax reforms idea with the current economy situation?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. We're glad that a lot of those bills didn't end up seeing the day because that $2 billion shortfall could have ended up being something that would be very difficult. So I really do think there's broad consensus. Of course, the Senate did pass a cap on assessment for property tax. That, of course, is very popular and is a proven record. We passed it, and now the House has agreed with that position. So I think that we will see that, giving some stability to the property owner across Georgia and predictability, which I think is maybe just as important. So we're very optimistic in that area.
Another big issue, a bill that didn't get through in the final minutes of last session, was the T-SPLOST bill. Are we going to see that again, and also any other transportation initiatives that may pop up this year?
A lot of transportation issues that will be moving through the process. As we all know, the second worst congestion problem in the country exists here in Metro Atlanta. It needs to be resolved. We need 4,000 new road miles, cost of $50 billion to do that. The old model is not going to take care of our future needs, and so we've got to be innovative. And the T-SPLOST concept, I think, makes a lot of sense. It's a proven track record where you have the general SPLOST along with the educational SPLOST, and now you would give local communities that third option, which would be the T-SPLOST. And consumers, voters, constituents would be able to look at that and determine which is a greater priority, if it's one or all three. So it's a proven track record. And then, you know, really redefining the Department of Transportation has got to occur as well. And we've got to look outside the box and look at the other tools like concessions and tolls and things of this nature, where you're engaging the private sector to come in and build many of these roads and utilizing the asset more efficiently. Movable lanes, movable medians that allow more capacity in peak times versus off-peak times. All of that needs to be put into a statewide transportation plan to really give us clear focus to move forward.
And another issue that it was one of your initiatives back in '07 when you first got going, one of your first ones to pass was the Charter Schools Initiative. Talk about the latest in your plans for education and charter schools. What's next?
Well, I'm extremely excited about the reform measures we've made in education. It really is my passion. I mean, as Lieutenant Governor, there are a lot of things that can catch my eye, but there are a few things that catch my heart. And the ability to really make an impact in the lives of kids is what I really want to be about. And we have done something really unique in education. The charter school system concept, which frees up the school from all the bureaucracy, allows teachers to get back involved in teaching to meet the need of that individual student. And what we're seeing in terms of success is out of this world. And I believe that we're not only going to set the barometer by which we will be measured in Georgia, but I think through the nation. We're going to really do something special in education through charter school systems. And then career academies, where we're teaching kids on a technical path of learning to where they're getting in school, and we're seeing 98% dropout, 98% graduation rate, 100% placement rate once they're finished. If you want to affect the dropout rate in Georgia, this is the way you do it. I mean, right now we are 48th in the country in our dropout rate. It's a shame that we've not really addressed it to this degree. But what the Career Academy concept does is it really gives kids a relevance in what they're learning, and we're going to continue to move down that path.
Well, the House and Senate didn't agree on everything last year, but it heads, especially a lot towards the end of the session. What are your predictions for 2009 when it comes to lack of a better term, getting along with the House and pushing things through together?
Well, you know, the truth is that we get along fine. I like him an awful lot. We philosophically disagree, and I think there's a right way to go about disagreeing, and certainly I don't do it in public. And but it's the nature of the business, and we are going to continue to you know, operate with the same principles that we always have, being a, you know, strong fiscal conservative and believing in setting a course for our state that'll be very positive in the end. The Speaker, you know, and I will, you know, continue our communication and try to work things out and make it as smooth as possible. The good thing is that there's not going to be any money to fight over, so that's going to have a way of trying to, you know, get us focused on the issues of importance.
Come late March or April, hopefully not late April, to look back at 2009 and deem it a success, what would you like to see?
Well, the good thing is the expectations are not very high, and the truth is if we get through this budget and not raising taxes, balance it, obviously strategically prioritize our spending, it will be a huge success. And if we can put in there some real solutions with education, transportation, along with trauma, those are things that I think are on people's mind. But I like to say, do no harm. Oftentimes, you're not judged by the new laws you put on the books, but how you protect people's freedom and their liberty and really take care of their business affairs.
Okay. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dave. Real honor. Thank you.
And finally, this evening, the House and Senate were brought together today in a unique showing of solidarity.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I am privileged to share this day with the Speaker.
You're out of order. Singing is not allowed on the floor of the House. To remind you new members,
birthdays on the same day. Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, legislative agendas are expected to be revealed at the Georgia Chamber of Commerce's annual Eggs and Issues Breakfast. We'll have the highlights from speeches by Governor Sonny Perdue, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, and House Speaker Glenn Richardson. If you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. on GPB or 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Coming up on GPB, Travels to the Edge with Art Wolf. Tonight's episode features Japan. That's next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for the first day of the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wandy Lawson.
And I'm David Zelsky. Good night, everyone.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.